Hello friends, I am Shelly Clough and today we are going to be painting some Halloween candy. I have another video of Halloween ghosts that you can check out and hopefully a little bit more Halloween stuff, but let's dive in and paint some candy. Alright, so I've got my supplies laid out here. I've got some Canson XL watercolor paper, I've got my palette of paints that I have linked all down below, and I'm going to be using a size 6 and size 4 watercolor brush today. And the first thing we're going to do is paint these little candy corn. So I am going to start with my size 4 brush because candy corn are so little that I'm going to use a little brush for it. And the first thing I want to do is start with a nice yellow color. So I'm just going to get some of this yellow and start to make a little puddle. And for the first layer of my candy corn, I don't need this yellow to be super dark. With watercolor, you want to make sure it's not too opaque. So if your paint looks very thick and creamy like this, it's probably too thick, but you want it to be a little bit runnier, kind of like tea or chicken broth or something like that. So I'm going to start with that color. And the shape of candy corn, it's kind of a triangle, but we're going to leave off the top of the triangle right now. So I'm going to just paint. I'm going to go do an angle down, and an angle down, and then do like a little smile here at the bottom. And this is going to get me my candy corn shape, and I'm just going to fill that whole thing in. And you can, if your sides are not as straight as you want, I actually feel like the bottom of this is a little too curvy. So I'm just going to even out that shape a little bit as well. So I'm going to do a few of these like they're scattered around. So again, just do my angle down, kind of a little curve, and then come back up. And then again, just sort of cutting off the top. I don't want to paint that top portion yet. And I'm going to do one more. I'm just going to add a little more yellow to this while it's wet. And then I'm going to come paint another one right over here. Come down, kind of curve, and come back up. Make it, you want it to look kind of like a little megaphone or something. And then just fill that in. Okay, so now I've got 3 little candy corns that I've started. I'm going to give my brush a good rinse, and then I'm going to mix an orange color. So to mix an orange, this is cadmium yellow that I started with, and I'm just going to add some cadmium red to that, which I have right next door here, till I have a nice orange color. So right now, that is still a little bit, I feel like that's maybe a little bit red. I'm just going to add a little more yellow to it. The nice thing with candy corn, most things we paint are, well, most things I paint at least, like flowers and leaves, they don't have super saturated colors because they are naturally occurring colors. They're not synthetic colors, but candy corn is candy. It's a synthetic color, so we get to use really vibrant colors today. So I'm just going to load up my brush. So you notice when I pick up paint, I swirl my paintbrush, and then I sort of tap it a couple times, or I'll swirl and then sort of brush it a couple times. What that does is gets rid of any droplets. This has also been giving my candy corn enough time to dry, so I know that my layer 1 is dry. So for layer 2, I am just going to mimic the same curve as the bottom right here, because the orange is in the middle on a candy corn. And I'm going to start to fill it in, but I'm going to leave a little sliver of yellow. And now here's the magic of watercolor. I'm going to rinse my brush, dab it on my paper towel, and then with that clean, damp brush, I'm going to smooth out that orange color. And I'm going to dab just a little extra on this side of it. And then this is actually doesn't look quite even to me, so I'm just going to fix that while I'm here. Okay, so there, step 1, and I'm just going to follow that on these other 2 as well. Make sure I have enough orange mixed up. Okay, now I'm going to go into my second candy corn, so I'm just going to follow this down and mimic that bottom line. Fill in here. And again, I just want to leave a little bit of that yellow peeking through. What this is doing is helping to create some of that rounded shape of the candy corn so it doesn't look totally flat. And then I don't want to leave that gap just like that. So I'm doing the rinse and dab the brush with that clean damp brush. I just sort of want to wiggle that area so I have kind of a gradient happening. I end up just re-wetting this whole area so I don't get any harsh lines. And then I'm going to bring and drop a little extra orange on this side. So I've got kind of a spectrum happening there. And then now on my third candy corn, do the same thing. I'm going to mimic that bottom line and then fill it in almost all the way. And I'm just being careful to go over exactly where I put that yellow so that I don't have kind of a double-sided edge on here. It looks like one continuous edge. And then I'm just gonna again drop a little extra color on that side. And then while I've got this orange mixed up, what I want to do is add a little dimension to the bottom portion of my candy corn. So generally I like to add a shadow in this kind of bottom left side. So I'm going to take that orange color that I have mixed up and just water it down a little bit, dipping my brush in the water and getting it just a little watered down so it's not going to overwhelm the yellow. And then I'm going to come and just work that sort of on this bottom region here. Down along here. And then maybe a little bit on this side too, just to make sure that that edge is visible. And then again, I'm going to take that clean damp brush and just sort of soften the edges on those lines. Okay, they're coming together. Do you see them starting to form? Now, a tricky part is creating the little tip of the candy corn. And so what we want to do is create like an outline that we can leave mostly white in the middle, but that helps the shape to come out. And I'm going to do that with a little bit of Payne's Gray, just a little bit of Payne's Gray and a little bit of burnt umber, which is like a brown color. And if you can see, I have just the tiniest bit of color on my brush, just a really tiny bit. And I'm going to make sure that the tip of my brush is nice and smushed together so I have a really fine tip. And I'm going to go and I'm going to come out and do the end of the shape of that candy corn. And I'm going to shade this side a little bit and then rinse my brush, kind of soften that just a bit. Okay, do you see that? Look how cute they are. Okay, now for another one, this one's still a little wet, so I'm going to do this one first. I'm coming out, you're just continuing the angle of that sort of trumpet shape, creating a rounded edge, and then closing it back up, and then a little bit of shadow, kind of the same side that you did shadow on your other part. So you've got like a darker color here and here and here. It's all sort of continuous. Now I can add the color on my last one here. And now this looks like it's going to be the last step, but we actually have one more step that's going to help these really come to life. So again, just sort of clean, damp brush, wiping that out. Now you can, they've really started to come to life. And then this one, my gradient sort of went away as it dried because I re-wet the whole thing. I'm just going to go back in with orange one more time and make sure that it's vibrant enough to show a difference. So I'm just going to redo a little bit of color there. That one kind of brought a little bit of shape back. Okay, so now for this final step, we're going to add a little shadow to our candy corn, and that helps it make it look kind of 3D, and it helps it look like it's popping off the page. So I'm going to take a clean brush, and I'm going to get just a little bit of this Payne's Gray color. And I want to make sure it's not too dark, kind of a medium tone. And this part's going to feel nerve-wracking, but it's okay. We're just going to trust the process. This one's still kind of wet, so I'm not going to touch that yet. I'm going to come in here first. And what I'm going to do is take some of that Payne's Gray and just run it along the very edge of this candy corn and a little bit around that corner. And it looks weird right now, but I'm going to take a clean, damp brush and just soften that edge all the way around. I just wiped it off so it didn't carry too much paint with it. I just soften that shadow. So you see how you can see the difference between these two? This one, it's kind of pulled it outward a little bit because you have that shadow. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other ones. Just grab that Payne's Gray. I'm going to run it. And I'm going to keep the shadow on the same side of all the candy corn. Okay, so I've got the color, and then I do the rinse, the dab, and then with my clean damp brush, I'm just softening the edge of that gray. And sometimes I'll rinse and dab one more time and just really soften that edge. There it is, they're coming to life. Okay, now I can go on to this one. It feels dry enough that I don't think I'm going to mess with it. Take that Payne's Gray, run it along here. It really helps to run it along that white part of the candy corn because that portion can be so tricky to see, and to have it show up on white watercolor paper, the shadow really does a lot of that work. So I'm going to curve it just a little bit around the top of that. It's nice and subtle. Okay. There are our little candy corn, and you can make that shadow more pronounced if you want. Like if I wanted to come through and deepen it up just a little bit. If I want to take it just really fine right there at the edge, then I can soften it again. So it's really just a little tug and pull, being really gentle with it, and building it up a little bit at a time. And then your shape starts to pull out, but you want it to be quite subtle. You want to make sure there's not a ton of gray right there, just a little bit coming along the outside of your candy corn. Okay, so there are my little candy corns. So that is the first type of Halloween candy that we're going to paint. And now I want to show you another really fun type of Halloween candy. We're going to make these little types of candy where they look like they're in kind of a shiny wrapper. And they are really fun to make. The only additional tool I'm going to be using for these is one of these micron pens, and I use the 01 size, and I'll link that in my Amazon links below as well. So I'm going to grab a fresh piece of paper, and we're going to do our wrapped up candies. So for this one, I'm going to use my size 6 brush to start out with. This is a Princeton Aqua Elite brush. And I'm going to get my brush wet, and the first one we're going to do is a pink one, and I love this color right here. It's called Opera Rose. It's by Winsor & Newton, and it is this fun fluorescent color, and you almost never can get away with using this. If you're painting like florals or something, you can add a little bit of it, but again, because we're painting candy, we can use this color because candy is not an organic matter. So I'm going to do pink. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of purple to that. This is called Purple Lake. So it's kind of this fluorescent purple tone that I've got going on. So I've got my color mixed up. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sort of a circular shape. And I want it to be a little oblong. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect. Don't worry about making a perfect circle. It works better if it's not perfect. Okay, and then while that's still wet, I'm just going to take a little extra of this purple tone and bring it on this bottom left corner. See how it's all still wet, so it's making a bit of a gradient. That's what I want to see. And then I'm going to, again, I'm just mixing up a little bit more of this pink purple color. And I'm going to add the sides to it, and the sides are going to look like a little fan. So I want to do an angle in and then an angle out. And I just want to create kind of a scratchy look at the end. So I'm just letting my brush sort of flare out and get this textured look on the sides. And I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to do my little fan out, and then work those little wiggles in there. And I'm going to drop a little bit of extra purple tone, kind of where it all gathers together. The colors tend to be more concentrated there. And so that is the initial layer. So these candies, they have the ugly middle of a painting. If you've ever heard that expression, these candies sort of have a longer, ugly middle. And so trust the process on this one. We're going to come back to it. But we're going to make one in another color. I'm going to take Viridian Green, which is this pretty bright turquoise color. Feels like such a perfect Halloween tone to complement all that orange and black. And to spice up this green a little bit, we're going to add lemon yellow. It makes it more of a neon green color. That's really fun. Okay, so now we've got that color, and I'm going to do, again, kind of a circular shape. This one, I'm doing it kind of at an angle from the other one. So it looks like my candy's all scattered around. I'm going to do that and then make my little fan shapes. Okay, and then while that is still wet, I'm going to mix a little bit of ultramarine blue into that green color so that I can have a shadow tone. So I'm going to put kind of a shadow color on this bottom portion and then a little bit at the base of these fans on the side. Okay, there is candy number 2, and let's do one more candy. Let's do like a blue one. I'm going to use, I think, this Prussian blue color, which is nice and vibrant. So this one, I'm just going to mix it up. Get it pretty watery. This one I want to be a much lighter color, because if it's too dark, it won't look kind of that shiny look that the other ones have. So there's my blue, and I'm going to do one more candy here while my other two are drying. Just going to again make that shape, kind of fill it in, and then grab a little bit darker of a tone of that and drop it in this corner over here. And these are fun. You can let them get nice and wet. You can really have fun dropping color in them because it will sort of add to the dimension of your candies. Okay, and then I'm going to make my little fans there on the sides. And the other side. A little bit of the darker blue on my brush and just tapping that in to these base areas where it meets up. Okay, so there is layer 1 of our candies, and now we're going to go in and add a layer 2. And so I'm going to take the same colors I did the first time around, but a little bit darker. So for my purple one, I'm going to do Opera Rose and Purple Lake. Just make that a little bit richer of a color. So I'm just, essentially what I'm doing is more pigment in my puddle of paint. So it's not that I'm using less water, it's that I'm using more pigment in the puddle of water. And that is what creates the more concentrated tone. Okay, so here's that. And I'm going to come and I'm going to just layer the same places where I tried to drop a shadow before. I'm going to do that again. So I'm kind of going to place that color over here. This is layer 2, and then I'm just going to mimic the same shape of my fans, but a little bit smaller for my shadow. And then what I'm going to do is do that softening and edge where I take a clean damp brush. I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. I'm going to drop a little bit more right here just so it has kind of some fun movement to it. All right, now I'm going to do it again on this one. Again, our colors. This one I'm going to do Viridian Green and a little bit of Ultramarine Blue just so that it goes a darker tone. So it kind of makes like a pretty teal color. And I'm going to take that, do the same thing, kind of drop it in this region here, and then drop it over here, making that little fan shape, and then just dabbing off my brush and kind of softening that edge a little bit there. Okay, and now onto my blue. For the blue, I'm going to take Prussian blue, and I have a little leftover Payne's Gray here. I'm just going to wet that all together so that I have a nice shadow tone. And come in here and drop a shadow. And you do want to make sure your first layer is at least, you know, 80 to 90% dry, so that your paint kind of stays where you're putting it. If it's still wet, your paint will just spread all over like it did on our first layer. Okay. All right, now I'm going to, again, just dab off my brush and kind of soften that edge a little bit there. Now I'm going to let this first one dry. Okay. Now that those are dry, I can go in with this micron pen, and this is where the magic happens with the candy. And I'm going to show you kind of a fun trick. I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer so you can really see what I'm doing for this portion. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to start down here. I'm going to go around the entire perimeter of my candy and not worrying about making it a perfect line. And then a few little strokes inward like that. And same thing on the other side. What that does is that mimics those little folds in the candy wrapper. And then on the exterior portion, I'm going to make it look 3D. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to follow this outer perimeter. Before I get to the edge, I'm going to stop and come in and make kind of this jagged line. And then I'm going to come up to the top of where I've painted and finish it. You see how now that looks 3D? And then I just do a couple of those little sketch lines down there. So let's do it to the other side. We're going to come up, but not all the way. Stop about right there. Make kind of a crooked line, bring it down, and then come and close it in on the top portion. There's now my wrapper looks 3D. And that's so fun. I love the added dimension that comes when you layer some pen on top. Okay, we're gonna do the same for these ones. So I'm gonna start outlining the round part of my candy, a few of these little lines coming in, and I'm just making sure that those lines sort of curve. See how they're sort of flared? That helps give that round look to the candy. And then again over here, stopping right there, making my jagged line, and then coming up here and finishing it. Over here, same thing. And I love these micron pens because one, they are waterproof. So if you use them before you paint, like if I wanted to layer paint on top of this after I draw, I can. It's not going to budge the pen. They also have a lovely fine point on them. And then they're also, they're archival quality, so they're not going to fade if you have art sitting around for a while, you know, or if you want to hang it in a museum. They might like a painting of your candies in a museum. And, but these pens are really nice. And then they have even finer tips than this one. This is an 01. I also love an 05 if I'm doing something like florals and I want to outline it. Okay, there is our Halloween candy. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. We have our candy corn that we made and our little Halloween candies. I hope you had fun. I would love to see your projects. If you post any, you can message me on Instagram or post them and tag me in them. I would love to see, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos.